but nevertheless, there's something that brings us together. And in a word, in Hebrew would be one word, hasipur, the story. There is a story which we're all part of, and this gives us our identity, meaning, and also direction. When I grew up in the 70s on the west side of Manhattan, together with my dear friend Rabbi David Polsky, who just wrote that he's out for Mincha, my feeling was what now would be called FOMO, fear of missing out, a feeling that the great story chapter of this story of the Jewish people I missed out on. These cosmic events, the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel, a Jewish state, Yerushalayim, which is more than just for Israelis, it's for all of the Jewish people. These dramatic events took place about a generation before I came around. But more and more I realize that not me and not any of you have missed out on this grand, great story of the Jewish people in our times. Because the real question is not these facts in themselves of Shivat Zion, of Yerushalayim, but what do we do? What do we do with these new realities in the Jewish world? What's next? What's the meaning of these tremendous events? And there are different answers to that, but part of this story, which is an integral part of the same vision of the future that included Shivat Zion and Yerushalayim, part and parcel of that great vision, and I'll quote some of the sources, is the Jewish people finding our role and place in the broad story of humanity, which is something I imagine centuries ago reading Divrei Nevi'im, people asking themselves, wait, if the Jewish people in mass return to the land of Israel, how does that fit in with having a role in the broad story of humanity, which are part of that same vision? And globalization, with things like we're doing now, meeting up in Zoom, perhaps answer what surely should have been a mystery for centuries. How does it fit together? Israel returning to be a center for the Jewish people, and at the same time, the Jewish people having a role to play in the story of humanity. And I feel it's a moral obligation to devote ourselves to giving meaning and significance to the events of our times, because thinking about the 100 generations of our mothers, our fathers, who went through literally hell so that we could be the Jewish people in our times, we have a moral obligation to all of them to fulfill a great destiny in the story of for the Jewish people. Now, one more insight before we get to the essential topic of today, and I will try to leave time for discussion at the end, so I'll go with the flow and then leaving as much as possible for discussions, is that one insight from the Zionist movement was that dramatic changes, every religious Jew believed that one day, for example, they would fulfill the prophecies of the return to Israel and Yerushalayim. But the great insight that we learned from those processes, that we need partnership. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls for our partnership in reality, in the world, to achieve a vision, a destiny for the Jewish people. And in that light, I would say, just like that vision for the destiny of the Jewish people of Shivat Zion, of Yerushalayim, took place because people much younger than me now were actively worked in the real realities of the world, and them pushing together with Chastei Shemayim allowed a vision to to become a reality. In the same way, the other aspects of fulfilling the destiny and responsibility of the Jewish people, it's not going to happen by itself. We have to we believe in Siyad Shmaya, but we have to do our part. So too in the area that you've now joining by being part of this program is finding what can we do to fulfill destiny, role, responsibility of the Jewish people relating to the issues of our place in the broad story of humanity, and in particular as Ovdei Hashem, people of religious people with humanities and their religious identity. So this is a calling, a responsibility, and we'll have two parts. First part, we'll try to show that this is not a sideshow, how fundamental this aspect is of Jewish identity and role in the world. And after that, I'll go to our particular topic about the relation to other religions in general. The story of that the big story is the story of humanity. It's not only of Achrit Yamim. Of course, we know the Torah starts with aspects of our shared humanity, all B'Tselem Elohim, all descendants of Adam and Eve. But more than that, by all three of the Avot. People remember it by Avram, if we're lucky. But by Avram and Yitzchak and Yaakov, it's clear that they were not chosen because God doing take two and let's abandon the world, but v'nivruchu b'cha mishpachot adama. They're chosen to bring blessings to the world. And this responsibility towards the world continues also by Har Sinai. We're given the Torah, and at the foot of Har Sinai, we're told to be an Am Skula B'Kol Amim, Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, a kingdom, a nation of priests. Priests are there to serve. And from context, being Kohanim, as Sefer Yeshayahu also ends with Am Yisrael as Kohanim, it's a calling to serve. And sometimes people feel concerned about chosenness. I very much identify with the definition of Levinas, that nifcharu, chosenness, is to demand more of yourself than you demand of others. To feel there's a calling and responsibility on yourself. If that's being chosen, halavai, all nations, all peoples should feel chosen. In Har Sinai, this is our mission. Already the first Beit HaMikdash of Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo devotes a lot of his dedication speech to the role of the Mikdash for humanity in general. And of course, which gives us a powerful preload to so many of the Nevuot. Zechariah, Yeshayahu, Micha throughout, envisioning the return to Zion together with humanity, Likra kulam b'shem Hashem ulavdo shchem achad, calling together in the name of God, serving God one shoulder. And perhaps one last way to show that how central this is, every single tefillah we have ends with Aleinu. If you daven 3 times a day, do the mathematics, more than 1,000 times a year. 1,000 times a year, we end our tefillot with Aleinu Shabeach, and the end of Aleinu is a vision of Yekir V'yedu Kol Yoshvei Tevel, a vision not just for the Jewish people, a vision of humanity in connection, calling in the name of Hashem, and serving God. So this cannot be overestimated. And again, if we are mitpalel for this more than 1,000 times a year, in that one, and this is only in the Aleinu context, there are many other contexts, we should be doing something about it and realizing that just like Shivat Zion, it won't happen by itself. It'll happen because enough of us feel this is part of our responsibility, of our essence, to promote this. So this is a deep and authentic Jewish vision. And furthermore, I would ask if it's if before October 7th, I would see this focus on vision. After October 7th, realizing that we're back on survival mode and not only on creating a vision mode in a conflict which is global. We painfully know this from Australia in the Far East to the US in the West. If you think of the verse, Mimizrach Shemesh ad Mevo'od Gadol Shmi Begoyim, unfortunately now, from the Far East for the Far West, we are in a crisis, we are in conflict, and the slogan that was everywhere in Israel during the war, Biyachad Ninatzeach, to realize that in the global realities we're in, the tiny, tiny Jewish people, even if we had everybody on board together, we can't do it alone. We don't have to be alone. We need bridges, we need partnerships. So it's vision, but it's also the struggle for survival that the issues we're dealing with of Israel and Umat Olam are essential. Now, maybe two last short points before we go on to the main topic. And again, my hope is to leave a lot of time for discussion. Some people, two critiques I often hear. So I could have waited for the discussion and someone invariably would have asked it, but I'll preempt. Some ask, there's so many internal problems within the Jewish people. Why deal with our something that seems more detached, further away, a relationship to Umat Olam? First, let's do our work within the Jewish people. But in particular in Israel, with so much of the inner conflicts in Israeli society between religious and secular, right and left, to realize so much of the dysfunctional aspect internal in Jewish society, and in particular in Israeli society, are the perception that there are fundamentally different attitudes between Judaism, between the different tribes in Israel about this issue. To create a language so that you could be a fully observant religious Jew who is deeply devoted to Israel as a Jewish state, to Eretz Yisrael, but also a language, a mentality, a vision, and actions that feel that this allows us to have a deep partnership and connection with broader humanity in general and minorities in particular. This is healing inner problems in the Jewish people. This is one aspect. Question number two, people are concerned about what this might do for assimilation by encountering the other and not demonizing anybody that's different than us in our religious identity. Can this undercut our identity as Jews? Can this lead to assimilation? Unfortunately, globalization is here whether we like it or not. The question is, do we relate to the global world as religious Jews from our deep religious identity, or is our religious identity something we keep on the side and relate to the world just as a person? And from encounters throughout the world, coming deeply connected to my identity as a Jew and encountering the world, I learn more about what it is to be a Jew. I feel deeper connected to my identity, and it makes being Jewish being more important rather than less important. I remember once there was a well-known journalist explained that his leaving of Torah mitzvot, the religious community, he honed in. He said, "I want to be part of the big world," and he felt somehow being a religious Jew in Israel, the scope of your interests are these little issues here or there, another hilltop somewhere in Samaria or whatnot. Somehow he felt the scope of what's dealt with in religious Judaism was so narrow, and he wanted to be part of that which is big. There's even a very popular weekly newspaper um, mostly for religious youth in Israel called Olam Katan, Little World, which gets to the heart of the problem. In a global society, people want to feel part of the big world and to show, as a religious Jew, you could be more of a part, not less a part. This is essential. Okay, so this is why this is so important. Now, the second part, and afterwards we'll open up to discussions, will be what does it mean to search for our partnerships and in a global society, what the nature of engaging the world as religious Jews in terms of the religious dimension of humanity. Certainly, it doesn't appear as a Jewish vision of everybody converting and becoming Jewish. Many see what I feel to be a mistake, feel that the horizon for humanity, for the 8 billion non-Jews in the world, are the mitzvot b'nei Noach, or as I used to hang out in India, I'd see cars all over the place saying 7 for 70. I'm a big Chabad fan, and 7 for 70, empowering, it's getting those 7 mitzvot for the 70 nations. And some rabbis, I have a dear friend of mine who wrote a Shulchan Aruch that we the Jews will define for you, the Gentiles, exactly what are the laws of the 7 mitzvot. We'll tell you what to do, and we'll have a bedin to decide whether or not to accept you as a ben Noach. I feel this is not, it's not going to work to get billions of people signed on to let us be B'nai Noach. I wouldn't want it to work because I feel this is a tragic mistake of a misunderstanding of mitzvot B'nai Noach. In the times of Noach, the world was destroyed. Humanity succeeded in destroying the world. Sometimes seems that we're trying to take two on that of destroying the world. But anyway, in times of Noah, humanity destroyed the world. The most important existential question after destroying the world, the survivors want to know, what should we avoid in order for the world not to be destroyed again? So, and the mitzvah of B'nai Noach, this is about how to avoid destroying the world again. They're all about stopping destructive behavior. 2 of them are about not violating destructive behavior relating to body, murder, and rape or sexual immorality. 2 of them are violating property, theft, and the need for a legal system. 2 of them are violations of the divine, idolatry, and blasphemy. And finally, to show something which is much more in the vogue now, we have not eating limbs from a living animal, which is a way of saying, do not be barbaric in your relation to animals. So this is about don't destroy the world. Sor Mira. But this is not a vision. This is not a hope. To settle for this, I mean, certainly there are those, it would be better than nothing. And yes, we should try to have humanity stop destroying each other and destroying the world. But a great vision for what is the world, it's not good enough, because it does not include neither the vertical line to Shamayim of even requiring belief, service, prayer of Ribbono Shel Olam, and it doesn't require the positive relations to one another to build a society based on staka, based on v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. So yes, for Noach, who was in general, Chazal are critical, a passive figure who did not actively try to save the world, it's enough to don't destroy the world. And that's why, for example, the category of Ger Toshav, someone who has rights in the land of Israel, are defined by somebody who fulfills the mitzvot of Bnei Noach, because it means a person who will not be a danger to society. But okay, it's important, but it's not good enough. This is not going to bring us to that vision of the Kra Kulam B'Shem Hashem Ulavdo Shchem Echad. So if it's not about Mitzvot B'nei Noach, if it's not about converting, so what is it about? And I feel, looking at the realities of the world, what it will be about, ultimately, will it be about a way of engaging, not all, but many of the world religions. The mitzvot b'nei Noach are significant in giving us a definition of a base of what are the boundaries of legitimacy, but to build that essence which is missing, how to build a connection to the Rabbano Shel Olam, and how to build connections to one another, these ingredients which are missing, religions often give answers, different answers to these fundamental issues. And it's in that context that I feel that ultimately, believe that ultimately we can get closer to step by step more of a realization of that great vision of the Nevi'im, of Aleinu Shabbat, remember, more than 1,000 times a day. But still, we have to see what gives legitimacy, because some religions can be more like cults. We know even about the Torah, the Gemara says that on the Pasuk, V'zot Torah asher sam Moshe, zacha sam achayim, lo zacha sam hamavet. We hope for religions that are sam achayim, a potion of life, but not religions, but groups that their identity is ultimately a sam hamavet. So this is a critical issue. So there's the foundations that Mitzvot B'nei Noach, and through the ages, the basic structure of our book, God Shall Be One, or Shmo Echad, gives different answers to this question. Some see a belief on divine revelation. We won't go into it more, but one of the few people the Rambam refers to as Moreinu V'Rabbeinu is Rav Netano Fayomi, the leader of Yemenite Jewry in the 12th century. And in his book, Gan Eschalim, which according to Rav Kapach, impacts strongly on the Moreh Nevuchim, he is explicit that he believes that God cares about all of humanity, and there is prophecy, just like there was prophecy in the times of the Torah, even bad prophets such as Bilam. Prophecy continues. There is guidance from above to within the context of religions to develop legitimate religions that have the elements of divinity within them. He clearly included Islam in this, and he quotes the Quran dozens and dozens of times. But when we talk about Islam, we could get more into that. Rav Kook has similar statements, saying that the possibilities of divine inspiration on many levels in the foundations of different religions. This is one approach. The approach that feels that there's divine guidance in the unfolding of certain global religions or certain aspects of global religions. Another approach, very famous, is that of the Meiri, that sees that religions to be judged not about the divine element within them, but based on what we see as fundamental values, ethics, the Miri talks about Godur B'darkei Hadatot is this is how we will determine our relationship to religions. Yes, there will be some basis of belief in God as a pillar, but the Miri says, but even if there are what we see as different mistakes and irregularities, we essentially it'll be the path of God. To what extent will we see as the path and the will of God being realized by the basic values, such as we know that Avram Avinu was chosen because Hidativ Shitzavet Banav Beito Lelechet B'derech Hashem Lasot Tzedakah Mishpat. That we feel that what we see as the ethical, moral path of God is being fulfilled in other religions. This will grant them their legitimacy. And if I mention Avram, perhaps I would add that I feel that if you think about the father of humanity, a better candidate for, I would believe, than Noach, even though we talk about B'nai Noach, I would see as Avraham. The Agadah makes this clear in Baba Batra. It says that when Avram died, all Gedolei Olam came and cried, "We are now a ship without our captain." And beyond belief, inconceivable to think. I lived for 30 years in Otniel and Har Hebron, to think this sort of a Bedouin who probably didn't know how to read or write, or there wasn't that much to read and write back then. I mean, they live somewhere near Nachal Hebron, where I live, and thousands of years later, most of humanity's religious identity comes from that path of Avram Avinu. Really, the great, most remarkable aspects of the world. Sometimes we are used to them, so we take them for granted. But truly, a fulfillment, and in general, Avram, who is Koreh B'Shem Hashem, Avram, through which the nations should be blessed. Avram, who spreads a path of tzedakah, derech Hashem mishpat, he has, on a large level, succeeded and embraced that success and see the sparks of that success within its impact on world religions, either aspects of Islam, Christianity that together are most of humanity, but also many other religions that sprouted from these religions, such as the Druze, the Baha'is, the Sikhs, and ideas often referred to as Western ideas, deeply impacted on Eastern religions. So the influence of Abraham is much greater even than the Abrahamic religions. Many of us will be in Washington in February. Some people have a minhag to go to Kivrei Tzadikim. When I'm in Washington, I usually go to the National Archives to be mishtatach on the original copy of the Declaration of Independence. Soon we're going to be celebrating 250 years. It's older even than me. It starts, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men," now probably say people, "are created equal, that the Creator, Borei Olam, gave inalienable rights to freedom, pursuit of happiness, etc., explicitly rooted in the Creator, in Briat Olam, the fundamental values of America." So the impact is truly inconceivable, but should not be taken for granted. And many of these values are under attack in our generation. If Charles Dickens would say, "We're in the best of times, we're in the worst of times," I feel this is relevant also to contemporary realities, that there's potentials as never before for interreligious cooperation, partnership, but there are also challenges like never before. That is why we cannot be passive. We must be part of this story. And even though we're so small, but we can have a tremendous influence, because some people feel if they would choose a word about humanity's relation to Jewish people, they would take hatred. I would pick the word obsession. There is there, there's there's tremendous amount of hate, but there's also a tremendous amount of love, but almost never indifference. The fact of the Torah being a foundational, and the Jewish people, our story, such a foundational story for humanity in so many ways, this had led to an interest and obsession. Obsession could lead to hatred, obsession could lead to love. And therefore, we have no choice but to be part of it, to see how can we channel this obsession, this fascination with the Jewish people to a positive sphere and not negative. Now, I would like, after mentioning these two approaches, to give a third and final approach. If there are those that see, legitimacy of religions that are based on the foundations of Bnei Noach, as overwhelmingly most religions are today, maybe I'll say a few words about that. Some see it as a divine element in it, Netanel Fayomi, Rav Kook, some others. Others see it as an ethical. I would like to add, or as they argue in God Shall Be One, a third dimension, which is saying that it is part of the Ratzon of Borei Olam to see not only a top-down phenomena as divine guidance, but see as a lechatchila and not as a b'diavad, as humanity in search of God, of the humanity creating itself, the models of what does it mean, how to create a connection with the Creator, how to create connections to one another. If you look in Tanakh, so many of the critical patterns of Avodat Hashem came from human intuition. Nobody told Hevel, thou shalt go bring a carbon. It was spiritual intuition about how to connect to the Creator. Pshat in the story of Enosh, that in times of Enosh, they started L'kra b'shem Hashem. Nobody told Enosh, this thou shalt pray. It was something intuitive. And to see that part of the idea of Adam Nivra B'Tselem Elohim is this creative aspect of humanity. It means, in part, to find our own ways, our own path, to define and create our connection to God, to one another. This is al-chatchila. I feel the most remarkable psukim in the Torah, which I feel is deeply underrated, because it's so deserving of tremendous thought and discussion, is in the story of Briat Olam, that Adam comes and gives names to the animals. And Hashem is there watching to see what name will Adam give to the animal, and the name that Adam will give, this will be that animal's name. In the context of the story of Briat Olam, giving a name is an essential part of creation. Part of Briat Olam, V'ikra L'or Yom, L'choshech Laila, L'rekia Shemayim, giving a name, names, and that's why we are Shemite, from Shem. Giving a name is not something external, it's something that captures and defines an essence. Saying that God leaves Adam to determine what is the name of the different parts of creation. This is showing Adam fulfilling his Tselem Elohim, about being a partner in creation by giving the names, defining, and I feel the same is true in religion, in spirituality, being partners with God in defining, in building the very concepts, the very terms of what it means for that vertical line to God or horizontal line to one another. And if anyone has FOMO, oh, so the non-Jews, they have that ability to evolve their religious connections. But the truth is, within Am Yisrael, but we have our foundations of the Brit of Har Sinai that we are obligated to, but thousands of years of Jewish life, Jewish thinking has created so much more. Or the Torah Shabbal Peh itself, as Rav Kook writes, is created based on the nature of the Jewish people. This is the beginning of Orot Torah. That yes, we have larger, broader foundations of our Brit of Har Sinai, but we too are partners in creating these patterns. So in a nutshell, I would say that part of the beauty, and I'm getting close to the end so we could have our discussions, part of the beauty of religions, the fact that not everything is spelled out. We should not have Jewish rabbis defining the details for other nations, the variety of the world, different cultures, growing up in different realities, creating themselves passionately, powerfully, the real content development of the essence. This is lechatchila. It is not b'diavad. True, there are aspects, things that have to be dealt with. In our aspects of things done in the name of Judaism, there are things that have to be called out also. So, as is by other religions. So it's a process, and perhaps together in interreligious discussion to be able to look in the best of others and help this develop the best in ourselves to create this linkage, but top down, each with the basis that we have, the 7 for 70, the Taryag for the Jews, but each from below, our Tselem Elohim, which is all of humanity, developing patterns of service, of how to call in the name of God, how to serve God one shoulder, and this could give a beauty in the very diversity of within the world and a fulfillment of that vision. Maybe one last comment, and then I'd like to open the discussion. And if we have time at the end, I could go on and on. Actually, maybe two more comments. Sorry. One issue, and certainly dealing with religion as Christianity, and if one day we get to talk about Hinduism, which I think in many ways India is the future. There are more people in India than all of Europe and North America together. What many of the issues about, can they be partners in calling B'Shem Hashem, because as opposed to religions such as Islam, the Sikhs, Baha'is, the Druze, their concept of the divine we see as what's halachically is called shituf. Yes, they do believe that above all there is the one, the divinity, but together with that, there's belief in other levels of divinity or idols or whatnot. Two, there's something we're learning this year in the Beit Midrash for Judaism and Humanity, since we started putting our focus now on Christianity, is what's known as the Ramban, but something which is really overwhelmingly in hundreds and hundreds of places throughout Tanakh, clear that there's a different definition for what is idolatry for Jews as for Gentiles. And this is because not the part of, in one word, Brit. The Jewish people, we have a Brit with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, a intimate, loving Brit with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, and if the essence of Judaism in general, it's all about relationships. Also with Ribono Shel Olam, the feeling of part of the unique story of the Jewish people, have a unique Brit, And in that context of the Brit, being faithful to the Brit is being exact in emunah with echad, with the one, without any additions or anything else. However, as the Ramban and others would point out, that for non-Jews, we do feel essential the belief that ultimately there is the one, at a basis of human unity, feeling our shared belief in the one creator who's beyond, above all and beyond all. But with that, we could be partners. The fact that we believe that mistakenly they might believe of lesser deities and some different facts, we'll see that as a unfortunate mistake, but it does not necessarily undercut our ability for partnership. So this is one potential question dealing with other religions, and I feel this is absolutely clear from the verse in Malachi, that in Malachi God says, "Mimizrach shemesh ad mavo'o, gadol shmi b'goyim." From the far east to the far west, my name is great among the nations, and they bring incense, ketoret, pure ketoret to me. And the Gemara points out, wait a second, these far east, far west, they don't know about the Jewish people, they don't know about Israel, and certainly they're not all monotheists like us, but the Gemara says, yes, but they believe that there is Aloha De'oloah. There is a God, a God above all, and this is seen favorably in the Sefer Malachi. Okay, so we have, again, I'm looking already at some of the questions in the chats that I'll begin with those. And last but not necessarily least, why I feel there's such an essential role of the Jewish people. In fact, I mentioned just yesterday, Israel's ambassador to the Vatican called me to get some bullet points because he was about to meet the person who is in charge of the Christian-Muslim dialogue for the Vatican, and wanted to know what could we as the Jewish people have to offer to this dialogue. And in some ways, one thing we could offer, that in some ways, if we see Islam and Christianity as different branches from the core story of Tanakh, which is acknowledged by both religions, about the obsession dealing with the Jewish people, being at the table, our role, our ability to appreciate, acknowledge, respond, gives a significant role. But above and beyond that, and with this truly I will end, one of the great potential for Judaism to play an important role in this field is, in essence, we are not imperialistic. This is a phrase coined by Rav Ashkenazi Monitou, that he talks about imperialistic religions feel that my religious identity must be imposed on all of humanity. And where Monitou sees that part of the beauty of the world is that it's not monolithic. He returns to the story of this Tower of Babel, about a tower was built in the pshat of the story to keep a unified identity for all, but ultimately that unity was shattered to allow different identities, and believing that ultimately the path is believing different identities, but something that brings us all together. The image he gives is a bouquet of flowers. Different nations are different flowers, but the bouquet is more beautiful than the sum of the parts, and seeing a role of the Jewish people because of our role as a core to the story of humanity, as our lack of trying for that to impose our identity. And this could allow us truly bring things, truly be a force to link together, to create a new language of thinking, of connection, the possibility of humanity with different religions, not merely tolerating one another, which is often as good as it gets in interfaith conferences, willing to tolerate each other or say we're all really exactly the same, but say no, we are not the same, and we will not merely tolerate the others, but see a blessing, a value in a world that the Hashem Echad is served in different ways. So this, in a nutshell, are some critical points, and I'm certainly happy. I'll start by the.
Let's take the question from Alex first
Please, yes,
on the
that's
chat,
Alex,
and
right,
then
right. Okay, um, so again, the question is, I think religion should be judged for better or for worse as they are now. Meaning that if a religion indeed would be monotheistic and be fully polytheistic, meaning at not that middle path I mentioned before of believing of a ultimate deity, creator above all, and lesser deities, but fully polytheistic like the Roman and Greek pantheon. What matters is what things are, the lived reality of religions as they are now. The fact what and sometimes things are worse than they used to be. Sometimes things are better than they used to be. The Rambam makes this point relating to his discussion on Islam. He was asked, "Is the Kaaba idolatrous?" And he says, "No. True, the Kaaba in Mecca originally was a focal point for idolatry, but the people that, meaning the Muslims, that now see this as the center for their pilgrim, as they are purely monotheistic, doing the Hajj to Mecca, there is not a problem of idolatry because what counts is not what the Kaaba was, but what the Kaaba is." Okay, and now happy to go into to other points, issues, and Rav Aaron, if there's something that you thought that I should have mentioned that I haven't, I could also add that also. But maybe first,
I have my first of all, thank you so much, Ravekov. Always a pleasure to hear you, and it's the same ideas from different different perspectives. But I don't want to take too much time from the group. I want to first of all open it for questions, and then I might have some comments to connect this to what we've done last week, what we're going to do for the rest of the year. But first, let's see, Ravekov, I see you have a question. Ravekov Klein? Yeah.
please.
Okay, first of all, Yashikar Yaakov, it's great to see you again. I wish we were again in person in your home, but this will do for now. I have a whole bunch of questions. I'm just going to limit myself just to a comment and one question. I have others, and the one comment.
Happy to be in touch, and even beyond the Zoom.
Yeah, okay, great.
You'll have
So
my contact
I'll send
numbers,
them.
and I could try to be in touch with anyone who
I'll
wants.
send them your way. Interestingly enough, I'm actually giving a shiur in about a half hour on the topic the topic I was given was why do they hate us? I would have chosen different words, but that was the topic I was given. And in thinking and preparing for the shiur, just something occurred to me interesting that I hadn't thought about before, and I've not seen in Sfarim, but I think it echoes some of the themes that you were speaking about. Is in the life of Yosef Atzadik, Chazal say, from here we learn that we should not choose favorite children. Because look, we ended up in Mitzrayim. And if you look at the experience that Yosef has, it begins by him having a dream of being the Moshel, right? And that's how they respond. Like, what do you dream? You're going to be the king. You're going to be our king. Like that's what the dream is. And in the end, it's Nisgala that no, he was actually there as a servant. Kila michya shlachani. Like he was going to be the king, but only to sustain them. And I think that might be a really good model for us, to sort of shift the idea of chosenness in the context of that. So that's just a comment. It may or may not be of use.
Lovely.
So that's the first thing. I guess the question that I have is, and it's really twofold, is number one, challenging texts, right? So I don't think that we can sort of ignore the Mamar Chazal, primarily in the Zohar, which might be another tenuous conversation, but there are explicit statements in the Zohar that are really hard to grapple with from the standpoint of Tzelem Elokim. The Zohar in Bereshit says that the non-Jews don't have a Tzelem Elokim. That doesn't apply to them. That's an explicit Zohar, right? Or the idea that Adam Rishon's body didn't contain the spirit of all of humanity, just contained the Jewish people, right? So there are those texts, which brings me to sort of the other point is, given the fact that there's probably a legitimate conflict tension within normative hashkafa over active and passive, right? So meaning we can sort of take our stance, and I know where I stand on that, and I'm fully on board with the, Hashem gave us the world, we have to love the Lushamra, we have to be the ones. But I think, and I guess I'm asking whether or not we could accommodate the fact that within normative Judaism, there is a very radically other view that reads all the prophecies as just something that's just going to happen, and sort of at least being able to say, yeah, I guess you're welcome to take that view if you'd like. We disagree, but like is that sort of the way that you would see it?
Wow. Okay. So these could all be lecturing yourself. Let me mention the Zohar. If you mention Zohar, the Zohar itself takes the story of Yosef and his brothers and says that the same way that the favoritism to Yosef led to that jealousy and tragic results, so too the status given by Akadosh Baruch Hu to Am Yisrael, also implied Midrashim Har Sinai Mishama Yerad Sina La'olam. So certainly this should be acknowledged as part of the problem, and the question is how to deal with it. And certainly I feel seeing it again as a mission, a responsibility, a calling, and not necessarily a privilege. In Masechet Horiot, there's a story that the Nasi is appointing somebody, doesn't want to take it, and says, "You think I'm giving you Sarara? You think I'm giving you a power? I'm giving you Avdut." So it's not, so humility, and I feel ability to acknowledge the good in others and feeling it as responsibility, these could deal with some of these issues. Problematic text is an enormous field in itself, in both ours and other traditions. And I feel, in a nutshell, again, I feel the question: what is the rule? What is the exception? And part of what I see as a partnership is in rule and exception, somehow having our intuitive look at the world, at reality, what's happening. And part of this, I feel, leads us. I mean, I feel to think that, for example, actively being part of an unfolding process. Okay, this could be a debate in the 19th century, but I feel after the beyond belief, beyond hope, Shivat Zion, Yerushalayim, to feel there isn't Yad Hashem in part of this process, which clearly needed the partnership. It could have been a theoretical issue. It's no longer a theoretical issue. Real things have been happening that to ignore that, just like books, you see there are a lot of books in this room, just like books are things to relate with the realities and dynamics of life, existence, and reality also require to integrate that, and for Torah, part of for the complete worldview of how things should be done. So this is the in a nutshell. And so again, so what's the rule? What's the exception? Are the texts said in certain contexts? And sometimes you have to choose, and you feel, and some way to feel what is essential. Like some of my Muslim friends that talk about some, in general, in Islam, most of these so-called problematic texts are mostly in the Hadith, much more than within the Quran. So they will say that if Hadith contradicts a core belief, a core statement in the Quran, which has a greater authority, we must either reject the Hadith or find some way to interpret it being said in a certain context alike. And I would say similar things about certain mystical texts to either say, okay, in kol hakavod, I mean, I try every day, I have a set limud Zohar every day, but to say not every statement said in the Zohar love Bishmaimi and love everything in the Zohar to feel that for full hitbatlut, or ways that I know of friends of mine who will talk about part of, and that's because it is so explicitly against core statements both in Tanakh and in Chazal, who are so explicit about this in so many places. And or other ways is to contextualize in some way. I have a colleague who is a major, one of the real Gedolim Kabbalat Ari. Maybe you've heard of Rav Padaya Nagar. So you should really of the Gedolim in the Kabbalat Ari in our times. So he would talk about part of it, even issues about nishamot, to be seen as a statements of what is the existential reality at that time, and in terms of that time in that place, this was the reality as demonic persecution. That this was the truth of that time. Whatever, there are different ways to deal with it. We're not going to solve all of them now, but true, indeed, this is something to be dealt with. Okay, other.
You sent me two videos. You want to show them? You want to say something about them?
Oh, okay. So maybe, yes. So I'll give the introduction. I've coined a word. Maybe one day I'll make it into the Webster's dictionary. Just like there's interfaith, there's interfake, and interfake. Feeling that much of the discussion on different conferences are very shallow, very lip service and external. And one phenomena that connects to is that I feel much of the discussion and many of the documents, if you read what's actually being said, it's unfortunately seems that the level that many religions are at is about, can we tolerate one another? Whereas toleration in Hebrew comes from the word savlanut, sevel, which is pain. Meaning, we're saying, ultimately, you are pain, but I am willing to bear the pain of you. That's savlanut. And for this, we don't have time. I see endless indications that there is not a true, from the heart, a real belief in, yes, we could build the world of calling b'shem Hashem, and without the need for our to imperialistically impose our exact identity on all, but it's really about savlanut lizbol, that we're willing to endure the pain of you. And I had a story that happened twice, exactly the same story, which let me realize, at first it seemed quirky and funny, but then I realized that this is really an expression of that painful truth. One of them, for 60 years to Nostra Aetate, I was in the Vatican for the official event with thousands of religious leaders commemorating 60 years to the dramatic change of how the Catholic Church views Judaism in particular and religions in general. And comes out the church choir, right? We all know there's a concept called church choir. This was the church choir, the church choir of the Vatican itself, with the other American guy with the white yarmulke and the American accent, Leo, right? The church choir, an event with the Pope at the heart of the Vatican. So they start singing. I had to really hold myself not to crack up. They sang the song that my late.
Should I show it? Is this
yes. I'll give one more word of introduction, then so the two things together, and you will see the song they sang, and right after we'll see another clip that I was with in Indonesia with the leader of the world's largest Muslim organization, the Nahdlatul Ulama, with more than 100 million members. And he too brought me to a choir in one of his schools, and they had exactly the same song. Listen to the songs. I think Ravana, enough about a minute from each of them, and hold yourselves back from laughing. But it's also you could cry because after we see a minute from each of these two films, I'll tell you why I feel this was not an accident. Let's go.
That?
Oh, we can't hear it.
No. Why not?
You have to share the computer audio, I think.
Let's.
When you share something on Zoom, you have to click on share audio in the share window.
In the share window.
In the share window, there's a special checkbox for sharing audio.
If it's complicated, I could turn it on by myself.
Okay, I don't see. I see. Promise me you can show the time.
Okay, it'll be a little more challenging about.
Okay, let's do it like this. Okay, I found it. Listen now. Okay. Okay, that's it. The other one, Yaakov?
Oh, that's the punch. Oh, this is the punch.
Okay.
הנה, זהו. Okay, right. I want to hear the words "and no religion too." And now let's go to the second tape from Jakarta, Indonesia. Exactly the same. The choir of the Nahdlatul Ulama with their 100 million followers. Play, oh, it's there too. It's enough to play a minute. You got the idea. I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Okay. What I realized, I had to hold myself back from laughing, but because if you don't know the words, it's imagine nothing to kill or die for, and no religions too. Meaning you go the Vatican, the Pope, the world's the number one, the leader of the world's largest Muslim group. What do they sing? Imagine no religion too. That they're identifying. They're saying, we realize religion, it's a problem. Religion is a big problem. Religion, what's religion? Something you kill and die for. And so we acknowledge this, and our response perhaps will not be like John Lennon about let's abolish religion, but we know this reality, and somehow we will have to overcome this reality. In other words, religion is a major problem, killing and dying for, and our hope is somehow, let's say Nostra Aetate, as they did, that we will try to find ourselves without abolishing religion, somehow nevertheless not kill and die for. Meaning ultimately their vision, it's about some level of tolerance. You are a pain. We don't really feel that there's a place for you, that there's a value in you. And that belief through the ages led us to killing each other. But now we will try to avoid killing each other. In many ways, explicit or in the subtext, that is the level of discussion with all the blah blah and the love, peace, tolerance. Ultimately, in the hearts, I feel the imperialism is still there. The feeling that we have everything, we should be everything, and you're a pain, you're a problem, and but nevertheless, we will tolerate you. Too much of the interfaith world is that interfaith that sounds sweet and sugarly, but doesn't really give a vision. And tolerance only works for so long. Because if someone's a pain, there's only so long you'll tolerate them, and then you will no longer be able to tolerate them. And too often we've seen this as painful realities. So this is why we hope and believe that from our sources, we have the ability to create a new language, a new way of thinking, authentic, real, and not fake, to bring this vision to the world. And perhaps this is the blessing that that we can bring to the world to overcome that imperialism and build a story of true partnership, fraternity, which doesn't preclude disagreements. But this is a contribution that I feel that the Jewish people have a potential to bring this, and certainly this group together, because this is the mindset, that drives us to, and the message that we've been spreading to the world from the Far East to the Far West.
Okay, great. Let's have 5 more minutes for questions. Of Shaul, you have a question?
I just wanted to ask Rabbi Yaakov, when I read the beginning of Netziv in Ha'amek Davar, when he speaks about Sefer HaYashar, that the Avot HaKadoshim, they teach us how to deal with the other religions, with the other people in the society. Maybe I'm always thinking how the Netziv, like 100 years ago, he thought about the feeling and the responsibility, how you need to relate to other people and to other religions in particular.
Yes, the Netziv is truly amazing on these issues. You can write a whole book about the Netziv statements about this. For example, the Netziv sees the purpose of Galut, with all our terrible suffering from being with Galut, as part of the way to fulfill our divine mission of Or L'Goyim and V'nivrochu B'cha. The Netziv makes his point in a number of places. So in the various footnotes in our book, God Shall Be One, the Netziv appears from time to time, and even more in the sequel to God Shall Be One, which is not called God Shall Be Two, but our second book, which is about minority rights in the Jewish state, that Netziv takes on even greater significance, because relating to minorities, feeling that as our Avot in Eretz Yisrael, being Anashim Yisharim, right? Not tzaddikim, that's nice, but Yisharim, be Yashar, and Yishar he sees is our way that we relate to other people. But indeed, the Netziv is amazing on this. And again, what I find so surprising, even in times of terrible persecutions, the chiddush is that you have so many voices of reconciliation. Meaning the fact that there are negative statements said in times that the Jewish people are living in a demonic reality, for the fact that there are negative statements about Gentiles and some of their religions, who in the name of their religions, the Jews are being massacred. That is the obvious. The chiddush is that people are able to nevertheless have a look deeper, look further, and feel there is a potential for something different, for a future that we could be freed from these traumas that we're undergoing now. Okay, so
Sorry. Dina Vakov, any other questions, comments? Okay, great. So what we're going to do now?
I just
Yehuda.
want Yehuda here. I'm sorry, I'm driving to an obligation right now, but Rabbi Yaakov, when you were showing that those funny videos, but sad videos, I guess what came up for me is there an alternative song? Let's say you wanted to have a song that was sung, right? Why are our cultures not producing those songs that are the right one to be singing?
Right. Can we close the recording and I'll tell you something which is so sweet, but I can't. I don't want it to be recorded.
Okay, it's paused.
Okay. So this is, we close the recording, not then to spread exactly, that's the issue. Because those who are Israelis know that one of the major figures in Israeli music is Evitar Banai. And he has a Beit Midrash of 20 musicians that similar stories of Choser B'Tshuva, deeply connected to Jewish spirituality and meaning, but a deep desire to connect that to their more universal values, the ways they were brought up. And we meet, we have a weekly chavruta, talking about studying together these issues exactly on this. And my deep hope, and one of the reasons I devote so much time to this, is the hope that from this necessary new music can and should emerge. So yes, this is part of our challenge, but we're working on it. So
Okay, Rebecca, thank you so much. What we're gonna do now, you're welcome to stay if you want. If not, you can, call it a day.
I have to walk the dog.
Okay, so great. I'll see you next week, I guess, in Jerusalem.
Look forward.
Oh, Matityahu, yeah, maybe Matityahu. Matityahu.
Hey.
Okay, so what I want to do now, we're gonna do it hopefully every meeting. We're gonna take the last 10-15 minutes to get to know each other a bit better. So we had like a round of introduction, which was just very general. So I asked a few people to prepare a 3 to 5 minutes presentation about their work and what they do, just to get to know them better. Hopefully we'll get to everybody throughout the year. So I asked of Tyson, of Daniel, and of Adina. So let's start with Adina. If you want to start, just... Also, Adina was still involved with JIC, which is one of those weird Jewish acronyms, which is also very relevant to what we do. So, Adina, the floor is yours. Let's take 3 to 5 minutes to tell us more about yourself.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a Jewish joke that says, before I begin, I want to say a few words. I just wanted to comment about the song issue. Is that in 1995, when Pope John Paul II had a mass at Giant Stadiums in New Jersey, there were a group of monks that serenaded him with the Rev Shlomo song Lamana Chai V'Rei. And that apparently that the Pope knew this song and they picked it. So I think it's very interesting because that's sort of the genre we're looking for, in terms of for my brothers and friends. I just wanted to throw that in the mix because it's already 31 years ago. So it's a privilege to be here, and I'm a humble fellow of Rabbi. As I said before, the two things we have in common is that he grew up on the Upper West Side, as did I. So that makes a very nice connection. I had a Cohen residence at Cohen Shema in New York. We rent space from on the Upper Side. And what I tried to do as part of my spiritual leadership there is reach out to people who I say are not yet affiliated. I don't like using the word unaffiliated. Rather, it's aspirational. If we reach out to people, hopefully they will become affiliated, but also to try to increase the spiritual connection of Orthodox Jews through the things we do, services, high holidays during the year, lectures, classes, etc. I work as a therapist, but one of my, I would say, avocations has been for many years interfaith dialogue and working with people in faith communities. A number of years ago, I was executive a secretary for JIC, and as Rav Levi and he had said, what does it stand for? It's a mouthful, a very interesting mouthful. It's the International Jewish Committee for Interreligious Consultations. And you'll notice that the word interfaith dialogue is not in the title. And that had to do with when this group was founded in the 1970s, it was to make it easier for Orthodox Jewish participation because it was adhering to the concept from the Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal that we can dialogue on communal matters and civic matters, but we can't be discussing theology. So it was very interesting because I was actually present at one of the number of conferences, which was at that time with the World Council of Churches, and this statement was read that we don't engage in interfaith dialogue, just as a disclaimer, and then we were engaging in interfaith dialogue. So it's interesting in terms of how to get Orthodox people in the room that might ordinarily be criticized from other people from within the Orthodox community. We dealt with, ICHKIC is sort of the official organization that dialogues with the Vatican, and we had very significant meetings, both with the Vatican's ambassador to Israel, the Israeli ambassador to the Vatican at that time, and heard a lot of different permutations. One of the interesting things that is some of the people who are keenly involved in dialogue with Catholics, Unitarians, and to some degree Muslims are converts. So, for example, there's a well-known case of someone from Israel who, was born in, I think he might have been, I don't know if he was born in D Camp, I don't remember. He might have been born in Israel. And after he took the Bagrut, and after his exam, he went sort of hiking, and he ended up as a Franciscan in the Franciscan order. And he was very involved in many of the connections of creating the liaison between the Vatican and eventually having relations with the state of Israel. I would say that, as I mentioned to...
One more minute, Adina, because we want to give time for Daniel as well. Let's take one more minute.
I can't hear you.
Let's take one more minute because I want to give time to Daniel as well, okay?
Yeah. So I just want to say that what I had mentioned last week, I think just in world events in the United States, it's created an interesting dynamic and forward of having these conversations, both with Episcopalians, Unitarians, Anglicans, and as well as Muslims, because of the political situation. So that's something that comes up continually, and trying to see, can we even meet in a civil way, have a civil conversation, even if there are extreme political disagreements. And that has been a real challenge over the last 2 years.
That's a challenge. That's what we all hear, I guess, and we're gonna try and create the tools and capacity to do that. So thank you so much, Adina. It's really in a nutshell. You're all in the WhatsApp group. Feel free to connect personally with Adina or anyone else, and start getting the ball rolling on many different fronts. And let's hear from Daniel for the last 3 minutes. Tyson, we'll have you next week, okay?
Okay, so my day job is not interfaith. Sorry, oops. The work I do in Aish here, I used to work in England. We did a lot of work, mainly with what we call Jews between when they were leaving home till they formed their own homes. and a huge amount of keeping people connected, engaged, growing Jewishly, etc. Now here in Jerusalem, that been the last year and a half, we're really putting a lot of focus into the digital space. I mean, I do teach in the yeshiva and the SEM here as well, but mostly really looking to, we used to have these dreams, how could you connect every Jew in the world and so on, and today Hashem's given us incredible kelim, and really and like the next 30 years is just going to, I believe, I say to people always that the gap between us today and us in 30 years time is probably bigger than the gap between pre-Neolithic man and us today. So crazy world and a very exciting world. And so I'm really working very hard on the educational component of that. There's tech people working on different projects, and we're really hoping to create very large ability for personalized learning for Jews everywhere in the world, all over the place. Obviously via that, whether we like it or not, we're going to end up with loads and loads of non-Jews. That was I had two portals into the interfaith thing. One was more philosophical, thinking about Islam, and the other was just the fact that so many non-Jews learn with us, whether we like it or not. And at first it was like this b'diavad thing, and increasingly I began to realize it's not such a b'diavad thing at all. This is a very l'chatchila thing. Interfaith-wise, so I started just trying to reach out to Muslims and understand Islam and understand where we're at. And my first initial feelings were very hopeless. And then I came across Rav Yaakov, and then later Rav Aaron, and also somebody else who goes by the name Ben Abramson, and also began to meet different Muslims at different phases. And we actually did some events. We still do the events every so often in Aish, where we do more interfaith type dialogue. And I'm always trying to really listen and let them give me the deeper understanding of what's going on in their spaces. So that's been very, very, like my brain is all the time thinking. Lately, I've also been doing, just because of anti-Semitism accusations, quite a lot of videos online, going through things that when I actually look up the sugyas properly, are often not sounding the way I first encountered them, like Atem Kriyim Odom, Einhem Kriyim Odom. I did a bit of a response to Candace Owen's claims about the Talmud. I did one about Yeshu in the Talmud. I actually did a lot of research on that. And at first I thought it might just be like a defensive move of the Ramban or the Meiri to say it's not Jesus, but I actually did a lot of deep research into who Nazarenes were and all this. It's very interesting. I'm actually pretty convinced there's no way that I meant that as Jesus. But anyway, that's the smaller side of what I do. But yeah, that's the 3-minute version.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Just one thought. A friend of mine has Torah classes in Spanish, and he gets like 40 million views. There are not 40 million Jews in the world. Like he gets obviously lots of non-Jews who see his videos, and that's part of the work. Okay. In respect of everybody's time, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for listening. We'll send the recording. We'll send also a text summary of Rav talk. And next week, we're going to take a deeper dive actually into the Catholic Church and interfaith relations between the Jewish people and the Catholic Church post October 7th. We're going to hear from a very straight out of the oven research about that from the researcher herself. And that's it. I'll see you next week. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi Nagan.